there we are. Three of us.
Hi, I'm Ginger.
I'm Dee.
I'm Marianne.
And this is Chattin with CHAP.
Well, hello everybody. Glad you could tune in with us today. We have our special friend Marianne Eagleson with us today.
Fun.
You know, like back in the day when my 17-year-old was in kindergarten, she was his gym teacher.
Aww.
Fun, good fun. So cute.
And Marianne started homeschooling back before it was legal. Like back before it was legal. What was that like?
Well, I like to say that Pennsylvania was like a crazy quilt. Every school district was different, and every school district set up its own standards, and so you were subject to whatever the school district said.
Wow, I can imagine.
Some school districts were preparing a policy that said you had to actually have a teaching certificate in order to teach your own children. There are stories of parents who were prosecuted by their school district. There were some that were told they just couldn't do it, so they went underground.
Yeah.
They actually went underground. Others were threatened with jail. I heard of one family that, can you imagine this, but they had an observer sent from the school district to watch them teach their own children.
Can you think your days are hard?
Oh, I couldn't even imagine
No.
someone watching over my shoulder.
No.
No.
Another friend told me that her school district was preparing to give her a rule that would mean she would have to come in every quarter with an evaluation for each child that she had. So she had 4 children, so that'd be a lot of evaluation for each child.
Imagine once a year.
So there was a lot of pressure from the school districts upon homeschoolers. And whatever the school district said is what they had to comply with. Now, fortunately for us, our oldest child, Hannah, was 8, not yet 8, before in the compulsory education age at that time was 8. So we started when she was 6, and just the time that she turned 8, just about that time, is when the law went through. So we were saved a lot of that harassment.
Wow.
Yes.
Although Bruce says, and I agree, we were prepared to leave the state if we would have had to.
Wow, that's amazing. That is an amazing commitment. And can you imagine, like, any of those things, being thrown in jail, having to go underground and hide, or having someone sit in your house?
Yeah.
That would have been so challenging. So it is such a blessing now that we can homeschool without worry.
That's right. That's right. And what a blessing it has been to Pennsylvania and to the nation that Marianne and her husband Bruce followed that call to homeschool.
Yeah, so Marianne, so when did homeschooling become legal in Pennsylvania?
It became legal in 1988 after about a 4 or 5 year uphill battle. And at that point then, it made things much more unified and much more peaceful for homeschoolers.
So Marianne, do you know anything about how it became legal, some of the details, the process?
I know a little. In September of 1984, Pennsylvania homeschoolers began to band together under the leadership of some homeschool leaders who were willing to learn how to get a law up. CHAP was there in the beginning, and actually it was then known as LaChia, Lancaster County Home Educated Association. And we grew out of that. CHAP grew out of that. Now the leaders of CHAP and many other committed homeschooler leaders and parents and HSLDA and sympathetic legislators began to get that process going. In 1987, HSLDA actually filed a suit against 11 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania on behalf of 9 homeschooling families. And they were saying that the situation in Pennsylvania was unconstitutionally vague. So the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania agreed with that assessment and gave the legislature 1 year to get a law in order.
Good. Put a time constraint on that.
And I actually recall that we went down, I believe it was the same time that my friend went down, who was, and it was this, she said it was 31 years ago right now that the law became a law, and there was this big rally at the Capitol, and she was 2 weeks overdue for her last child. So that's how committed she was to trying to see this get through.
She was committed.
Put her to the Capitol.
Yeah. Oh wow.
So after much sausage making, if you know anything about how laws
I know
made,
about sausage.
the law was born.
I know about sausage. So it's so amazing. So I know that through your homeschool walk, you've been involved in a bunch of organizations that promote homeschooling nationally and statewide, but we're not going to get into those details just today.
That's for another chat.
It is.
Another Chattin with CHAP.
We'll have Marianne back.
Yes.
But we do want to know is how has CHAP been involved in making that original, really stringent Pennsylvania law better?
Well, that 1988 law was great, but gave us what we
Legal
basically need to
status.
keep going.
Yeah.
But it was pretty restrictive. Now this map, we have to.
There you go. We're good.
Yeah, we're
Here we are, kids.
Yeah. You can see that those states are red, that means, you can find this on the Homeschool Legal Defense Association's website, that means it's very restrictive. A lot of oversight from your school district. The rest of the nation lives pretty happily, but we are probably neck and neck with New York for the most restrictive law in the nation. So CHAP created a thing called HELP, Home Education Lobbying Program. We just sort of learned from HSLDA how to do a little bit of lobbying, and we would set up a few lobby days, and families would come in and they would learn a little bit that we learned from HSLDA.
Yeah.
And we'd go into the Capitol and we would actually lobby, particularly about issues that we saw that were coming up that might be restrictive for us as homeschooling parents. Over the years, CHAP has monitored bills and kept track of legislation that would impact homeschooling freedom or negatively in any other ways. We would call for action from our members, and many of you did that, and that was a very blessing, very good blessing. Then in 2002, HB 2560 was introduced. CHAP and many other homeschooling leaders and organizations, HSLDA, band together to get this formed. Really, it didn't take a lot of work because we had hoped for a complete freedom bill, which was you would just simply have to send in an intent to the school district, and that's how you would let them know that you were homeschooling.
Yeah.
And that was
No
it.
other states do that. We keep coming into Pennsylvania and say, "This is what I did." No,
Yeah, so different here.
Yeah.
So a hearing was held, and that, if I recall correctly, at that time it was probably the most attended hearing in all of Pennsylvania history. There were over 1,000, or near 1,000, somewhere around that count, of homeschoolers who were in support of this bill. They wore red T-shirts, so we kind of joked that it was the Red Sea. It was a little allusion to Moses, that you'd like a little escape across the Red Sea to some freedom over here.
Wow.
We had about 100 who were opposed, and they wore blue shirts. And I'd say the testimonies that were heard there were primarily in favor. They had several people testifying, 8 or 9 people, one public school teacher and one person who was opposed, and then the rest were pretty much in favor. In the end, the legislators said that those 100 represented disunity in the homeschooling movement. And they slapped a poison amendment on this bill, which meant it was an amendment that would make it very difficult if it got out of the education committee or ever passed, and it killed it. But it still was helpful because it put CHAP on the map. People began to understand that CHAP was there, that they cared about what's happening, that they were working as much as we could to keep you alerted, everybody out there, to what was going on in the legislature. And home education became something known for the House Education Committee. We would go down and visit post that time, and the conservative members, 2 or 3 of them, would actually come to us and say, tell us about this bill. What do you think about this? So they actually were looking for some of our advice. Not that it had much impact, but they were aware.
But they were looking
and they were aware that homeschoolers could be a force to reckon with. So I think they were trying to at least be tender.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
That's good.
That's amazing. That is just amazing. That I just take for granted the last 18 years of homeschooling.
Yeah.
And how relatively easy it has been for me because it's here and the law has been passed. But that's an amazing story. So,
awesome.
Were there any other changes in the law that CHAP was involved in?
Yes, in 2014, there were some positive changes that took place on the current law. The CHAP legislative liaison at that time, along with other homeschooling leaders, worked with legislators and HSLDA to try to ease up the burden on the law that we have. And they had hoped to do more, but the complications of making a law, making sausage, thwarted some of their efforts. So the sausage came out a little bit. It wasn't quite Lebanon sweet bologna.
It was apple breakfast sausage.
But nonetheless, their work had some great gains for us. The change means that we eliminate the public school superintendent's review of the portfolios, which is great.
Yes.
It requires superintendents to accept an evaluator's determination that an appropriate education has taken place for homeschooling family, provides for an administrative procedure to resolve any claim by the superintendent that something had gone wrong in the particular year's learning process. And it ensures that homeschooling program may continue during any time there's an appeal for an adverse ruling by a hearing examiner, so you don't have to stop if there's some question. And I think this one's important. It also requires that a high school diploma from a supervisor of homeschooling program signed by an evaluator, and if you wish, a superintendent of your school district, would be recognized and have the same value as a diploma issued by Commonwealth, which is great.
That is awesome. That is really great. That definitely changed the trajectory of my homeschooling programs.
It sure did.
Yeah. So we are so fortunate to have those legislators too who are willing to work with us to make the law better. I mean, there's people who are willing to help make homeschooling better.
Yeah, and what a blessing to homeschoolers that CHAP has been here to guide and influence legislators to make the new laws friendlier.
Yeah.
When CHAP and HSLDA and many other homeschooling leaders and parents are working on a bill to try to exempt homeschoolers from the recent HB 1650 that occurred to our great surprise this year. CHAP and HSLDA and others have been monitoring this closely, but it was passed rather stealthily. They took as much action as they could when they learned about 12 to 24 hours before what had actually happened. This action, it limits our homeschooling freedom by dropping that compulsory age from 8 to 6.
Yeah.
And then also extending it on the other side, it goes beyond 17 to 18. But they're hoping that the people who are working is that they can get that changed too, so that if you've completed your education at 16 or 17, you're ready to go on the next phase, that you won't be hindered by that. And you'll probably have to just submit an intent. Is what the hope is. You would submit an intent to homeschool if you have a 6-year-old, and then you would be free from that for 2 years.
Wow.
So go ahead. I was at the wrong spot.
He's working on a change in the school code. Hopefully we'll make this situation better. Now, CHAP's current legislative liaison is Esquire Brad Estito, a wonderful man, works tirelessly to keep a watch on the legislative issues. Ginger and Dee said that he had read over 361 bills this year.
Have you ever read a bill?
Yeah,
I read 361 of them. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, someone from CHAP is reading all
bills.
of those bills to ensure that
nothing's sneaking in there.
Wow.
And of course, CHAP tries to alert its members or people that are associated with CHAP to act if we need to, if something comes up that's a threat to our freedoms. I think this is the most important thing, is you out there, that those of you who send the emails, make the phone calls, visit and lobby, that makes a huge difference. You're the face of homeschoolers in Pennsylvania, and it's so important that you make that known, and we thank you for taking part in that, because it's your efforts that keep that question of homeschooling freedom in front of the legislation.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you all. Thank you all of you who are out there who are faithful supporters. Thank you for all the time you give, your talents, any way that you're supporting CHAP and getting involved, whether it's legislatively or otherwise. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing without the people who have volunteered. So we thank you so much, and we are so glad for CHAP. We're so glad that CHAP has been here. The previous CHAP board members who have worked so tirelessly to make Pennsylvania homeschooling better. Seriously, hours of hard work.
That's right. Lots of
predecessors.
Lots of blood, sweat,
Everybody.
lots of blood, sweat, and
It's a
tears.
group effort.
Lots of blood, sweat, and tears.
But it's also a lot of joy, because there's a lot of joy.
Yeah, and it's really great to see unity among homeschoolers, even if they have different philosophy about education or whatever, working together on these freedom issues, because this is critical.
That's right. It is critical. It is very critical. So viewers, if you would like to be involved in making homeschooling better in Pennsylvania and helping to protect our right to homeschool, please let us know. CHAP needs you.
Yes. Comment below, or you can email us at staff@chaponline.com. We are building a legislative team because we want to keep our relationships up there fresh in Harrisburg. So if you're interested in that, we want to know.
That's right.
So without your help, it'd be a whole lot harder to accomplish this.
Yes, certainly.
That's right. Accomplishing law changes as a team for homeschoolers across the state is so rewarding.
It is, and not to mention, it's going to help generations of homeschoolers come, like your kids, your kids, kids, and on we go.
And every bit of help counts.
It does.
Every bit counts.
Yeah. And the relationships we build as we do it are forever. How about it, Mary?
Yes, I concur. That's great.
If you can't give time, perhaps you could give a donation to CHAP's legislative efforts. You can go to chaponline.com/donate.
Thanks for partnering with CHAP to continue making homeschooling better in Pennsylvania.
And we will continue to work to equip and connect and encourage and protect you and all the homeschoolers here in Pennsylvania.
That's right. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, Marianne. I know it blessed me tremendously just to hear from you and to hear the way that you work tirelessly to pave the way for us.
And how things change.
Thank
It's
you.
been awesome having you here, and we'll have you back.
It's been a joy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm happy to share, and hopefully it'll impact somebody to think about that one email, that one phone call.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. You never know when your pie will change someone's mind.
Yeah.
Your
We'll
lobby
fix
pie.
that sausage.
Fix that sausage.
That's right. That's right. Well,
So
this has been Chat with Chap. See you
All
next
right,
week.
everybody. Good